Star Bowling with the top bowling stars of America. Brought to you by Hi there, everyone, and welcome once again to Top Star Bowling from the Hoffman Lanes here at Hoffman Estates, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. I'm Jack Buck, and it's always my pleasure to introduce the participants on the show as they reach for a portion of the $40,000 in prize money, $1,000 to the winner each day, $500 to the loser, along with a very attractive LaSalle wristwatch. And we have a gentleman who is coming back now for the 5th time on the show, and the last time he was here, he won with a 681 series. You've grown to know him quite well and admire his bowling. The defending champion here in this King of the Hill format that we employ, Dick Hoover. Dick, good to see you once again.
Well, it's always nice to be back, Jack.
A 681 series last time was correct, right?
That's right, Jack.
Can you go over the names of those whom you have defeated?
Well,
Andy Rogoznica was the first one. Don Ellis.
Well, Don Ellis was the first one.
Right.
Then it was.
Then Rogoznica.
No, he got beat earlier in the show. It was Bill Pace, rather. I always get those two mixed up
right
there. And
Glenn Blakesley.
Glenn Blakesley, right. And Bill Tucker.
Bill Tucker. And now your opponent today is one of the greatest in the game, Dick.
Oh, the one and only.
I forgot to mention when Dick came up here that Dick is from St. Louis by way of Akron for the benefit of those who are viewing in. And let's bring up his opponent right now, 9 times an All-American, 4-time the BPAA All-Star champion, Mr. Don Carter. Don, meet your opponent for the day, Dick Hoover, as if you haven't been with him before and against him quite often, right?
Met him a few times. Yeah.
I know that quite often in team events you have competed.
Yes, we have. We've been rivals on team events for the last, 7, 8 years now.
Don, I know you'd be disappointed in me if I didn't ask you about that glove, and a lot of folks who are going to be watching would be curious to know just what function it does serve.
Well, mainly, Jack, it's the pad that we have in the center of the glove. Keeps the ball firm throughout the release, and therefore you don't have to squeeze the ball nearly as tight. It also eliminates a lot of the thumb problems.
And you're hopeful today you'll give a good testimonial for the Don Carter glove.
You should have asked me after this if I win, Jack.
We're going to have to wait and see about that, Don. I know it's going to be a very enjoyable match. Best of luck to you.
Fine. Thank you, Jack.
And to you, Dick Hoover.
Thank you.
Folks, I know you're going to enjoy it this afternoon. Are you all set for the match? Dick Hoover is going to be leading off here as we get underway with Top Star Bowling. Dick Hoover it is as Don Carter won the toss. Chose to start on 30. It's Hoover on 29 and off and running, crossing over just a bit and leaving the 3-6 for a start. Hoover has certainly been very much at home on this pair of lanes, this being his 5th appearance in Top Star Bowling, and he's gone down the line with a 215 average thus far and a high of 681 and a high single of 257 against Don Carter this afternoon. And there's Hoover. We're at the 3-6. Gets up there and he covers. And now we shall watch Don Carter and the very unique style that he employs. And his first ball is a strike. About what you would expect. And strikes are what we expect from Dick Hoover in the games here. A 3-game match, total pins counts. $1,000 first prize, $500 second prize. And Don Carter will be looking for the double to gain the initial advantage over his foe here this week. And he's a bit high, but he carried. I know he didn't expect to get that one. Turned around with his eyes closed, got that double. Dick Hoover will be coming up working on that spare. With me at the microphone, a statistician and expert interpreter, Jerome Whitey Harris, a member of the Brunswick Advisory Staff of Champions. You'll be hearing from Whitey as we go along here. Hoover is a bit high. He carried. He wasn't quite as high as Don Carter was. Carter was more on the nose when he got that strike that gave him the double. Dick Hoover was a bit high, but with that very powerful ball that he throws, he got his strike. He turned that one over, didn't he? He was a bit high, leaves the 6-10. What does Dick Hoover seem to be doing, as you see it, Whitey Harris, as opposed to what he has done in the past here?
On that particular lane, Jack, you know, they've often told us, each one of these bowlers, that that's an inside lane. And that time why Dick was just played it too high, ran the ball right into the nose.
The 6-10 confronts him. He covers. So he has a spare, strike, spare. Terrific match for you to enjoy this week. Other fine names are upcoming here on Top Star Bowling. Carter looking for 3, gets a 7 count, leaves the 2-5-8 with a very thin hit. The ball failed to carry through, as the 5-pin would indicate, as it stands there. In the very near future, in the forthcoming weeks, we'll have Carl Richard, Steve Nagy, Dick Agee. Others to come along will be Ray Bluth, Tom Hennessy, Billy Golombieski, Joe Joseph. You couldn't ask for better names or better bowlers. Carter looking for his spare. Covers all 3 pins very nicely. So he has a lead of 7 pins right at this moment, brought about by the double that he accomplished in the first 2 frames. They each have a spare working in the third. Carter on 29. Ball out there, and a strike. So that's 3 out of 4 deliveries. From my angle, I thought there was going to be a bit high, Whitey, but it carried very nicely.
Well, Don has the ability to hold that tight inside line, and that's a good example of it, the way his ball reacts.
In other words, the ball isn't diving like a lot of others when it appears high.
That's correct.
As Dick Hoover looks beautiful. There's a beautiful strike for Dick Hoover. These folks there at the Hoffman Lanes just standing by, waiting for the fireworks that they are quite certain will emanate from this particular match, holding a bit in reserve for the second and third games here. So each man will be looking for the double in the 5th frame. Will Hoover get it? Why not? Can't stand up when you hit him like that, and so for Hoover, it's spare, strike, spare, then a double. 60 through the third with a double up. Don Carter, in order to maintain his lead of 7 pins, will have to get his double right here. Right over that second arrow. There's his double. So he stays right with him and maintains his lead. Now, who's going to get the 3-bagger? He was high, leaves the 4-pin, and he had a lot of action down there as those score kings were scooting down there in all directions, from all directions, to all portions. Don trying to bring back his spare. Gets the 4-pin. That gives Don 116 through the 5th frame with a spare up. And now Dick Hoover can do away with that 7-pin advantage that Don Carter owns over him. Whoops. On the nose and a 3-pin. He throws so hard that if a ball in a comparable position thrown by an ordinary bowler probably would bring about a split, he gets away from a lot. But at the same time, he pays the price for throwing so hard by oftentimes leaving 10 pins and 5 pins where the ordinary bowler would not with a comparable ball. So the 3-pin goes down. This match is nip and tuck right here, with Carter having the one advantage of the additional double with which he started. And you see the difference, still 7 pins, and each working on a spare with the 7th frame coming around. Here's Dick Hoover, 2-time Masters champion. Hoover leaves the 4-pin. Left the 3-pin in the 6th frame, the 4-pin here. It's the first 4-pin that he has left. Giving Dick 128 through the 6th. They really bear down in every delivery. and open in such competition could be disastrous and could be something they'd be looking back on throughout the entire match and when the games are over. Carter with a chance to pick up a pin or two. There's his strike. There's his strike. Boy, these lanes here at the Hoffman Lanes are beautifully conditioned. And you can see the people seated back of the bowler's settee who are responsible. We're talking about Joe Abel and Len Lammensdorf. They are the owners of this particular lane, a portion of A&L Corporation. Paul Cerniglia, the general manager, Harry Matthews, the manager. They've done quite a job. Don Carter has 5 strikes so far. He's in the 8th frame and looking for a double. What do you think? A light hit? Carries for him. That's a double. A thin hit, a lot of action, a ball that pin teetered and tottered, and just before that Brunswick machine came down to grab it, and believe me, it would have with no problem at all. It toppled for him. Carter gets the double. That is his 3rd double of the match, his 6th strike of the match. Dick Hoover is on a spare and rolling here in the 8th frame. Beautiful. I know I'm using that particular adjective quite often. It's one that the bowlers get you in the habit of saying.
Jack, you know, Carter's always been accused of having such stolid features and never smiling or anything. He came back that last time, and he was smiling.
Here's Dick Hoover looking for his double, which he needs. He's in the 9th frame. He's on the nose. He leaves the 6th pin. What happens, Whitey, if the machine knocks it down?
Well, according to the interpretation of the rules of the American Bowling Congress, Jack, if the automatic does touch the pin is then reset into the spot. That's ABC rules.
Reset to the original spot?
Yes.
So Hoover did not get his double. Don Carter has increased his lead. Hoover looking for the spare here in the 9th frame. And he covers the 6th pin. Don Carter comes up to bowl. In the 9th frame, Carter has a double going for him, and he has a lead in the match of 8 pins plus, dependent, of course, on what he does with this particular delivery. Carter has 6 strikes, has put them together for 3 double. That ball didn't move for him. The ball didn't move. 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. And that's a tough one to cover for the spare. 161 through the 7th, a 13-pin advantage. That one hurt him. And he's got to cover this. And there are a lot of ways to miss that one, and that's one of them as Carter opens here. Carter leaves the 7th. And now, when Dick Hoover comes up, and by the way, Carter is entering the roll-off, the 10th frame, when Dick Hoover comes up, he'll have a chance to get within 1 pin of Carter. There's one of them. 219 if Don can go all the way. 218 if Hoover can go all the way. That might typify the sort of action that we're going to have throughout. That was the 7th strike that Carter has thrown. He's had 2 spares and an open. There's another one. Boy, that pitch in the 9th frame really hurt him.
Pitch like that in this particular frame cost Don about 47 pins.
Don finishes with 219. Well, no matter what Dick Hoover does, Don will be ahead by at least 1 pin when this match is over. Hoover needs to go all the way for 218. So as Whitey Harris told you, that one in the 9th inning was very costly. Cost him 30-some pins in reality. There's the first one for Hoover. And Dick Hoover is not without his rooters here at Hoffman Lanes. That gives Dick 188 through the 9th. Needs this one to stay on the heels of Don Carter. $1,000 first prize, plus the right to stay around for another week and take on the next challenger, who in this case would be Carl Richard. double for him. So he's going to be right with him, a 10 count. Dick Hoover needs 10 to get within 1 of Don Carter. And he carries 5 and ends with a total of 213. So it's here in the first game, 213 for Dick Hoover, 219 for Don Carter, a 6-pin lead for Don as the conclusion of the first game. Now a message for you right here, and we'll come back in just a moment. 219 to 213 at the conclusion of the first game. And Dick Hoover, this is about the sort of action that we expected. It'll probably be this close down the line, huh?
Well, I think it should be some good scores. Don's a very fine competitor, you know, and he's a very tough opponent to outscore.
Anything in particular that we should look for as the second game progresses?
No, I don't think so. I think that there'll be a lot of strikes, and I hope it'll be a very close match.
I think both have a pretty good line on that pocket, huh?
Yes, I believe so, Jack.
Just see who gets them to fall for them properly.
Who gets a break at the right time should decide the match, yes.
Okay, Dick Hoover.
Thank you.
And good luck to you and to Don Carter. You folks all set? Second game here on Top Star Bowling. Don Carter will lead off in game number 2. Carter with a 6-pin lead at this point. Don had the most strikes in the first game, but he also had an open, and he comes up with a 4-6-10 to start here. Dick Hoover had no opens. They were each bothered by a bad pin count, working on a mark.
How'd you like to get some odds on betting against these two bowlers of getting a combination like that, Jack? The 2, 4, 5, 7, 8 in the same match.
That's right. They each did that. Carter in the 9th and Hoover in the 10th. I'd overlooked that. Carter trying to get all the pins he can, going for the 6-10. And he covers only the 6, so he has an 8 count in the first frame, and there goes his lead. It's all it takes. You know, bowling is comparable to most any other sport that you can come up with. A game of mistakes. When you're competing in equal company, it's the mistakes that occur that are going to cost you a high hit and a 4. I don't think Hoover expected the strike that time, although he'd been happy to take it. So it appears as if he's going to start with the spare as opposed to Carter's 8 count. $1,000 first prize. In this entire series, $40,000 is involved. $500 to the loser of each match. A LaSalle wristwatch for each. The 4-pin, spare for Hoover. When Dick Hoover's not talking about bowling, he's talking about golf, water skiing, and boating. But he's usually talking about this sport. Working on a spare, looking for the strike, and a 10-pin tap. Dick has been in the finals 4 times of the World's Invitational. He won the BPAA All-Star in 50-51. He was also a doubles champion, teaming with Glenn Ellison, right?
Yeah, Jack, speaking of the World Invitational, in the audience today is Jim Kearns and Bill King, who are of the Chicago Bowling Proprietors Association.
They originated that World's Invitational. There's the 10-pin, so 2 spares for Hoover to start this second game. 19 in the first frame. So at this point, he has an 11-pin lead in this particular game. Therefore, a 5-pin overall lead over Don Carter, as Hoover leads for the first time in the match. Carter started with a double in the first game and was ahead up until now, all the way. Is that one there? There's his strike. And now a double can erase that deficit with which he is faced. You start reeling off the titles that this fellow has racked up, or you're in trouble. BPAA All-Star 4 times, World's Invitational 4 times, ABC Masters in 61, BPAA doubles with Tom Hennessy. team champions, team all events. On the head pin, got away from the split as a 7-pin drop for him. You know, a funny thing in that first game, there was a moth that flew up off the lane that bothered Carter in that first game.
Did you open up your purse?
I probably did. That's probably where it came from. Carter shooting the 6-10. Look out! He takes the 10 off the 6, and he has 2 out of the 3 open frames. Dick Hoover is working on a spare and working on a lead. Hoover didn't get up there, but got a good count. Leaves the 2-pin. Dick Hoover shooting the 2-pin. And he marks 3 spares in a row to start this second game. As opposed to Don Carter's split, strike, and miss. Of course, Dick Hoover would like to be striking along about this point to take advantage of the brief lapse by Don Carter, who had 9 strikes in the first game, yet managed only a 6-pin lead. And Hoover threw that one out the window. He was shaking his head, even as he let that one go. Got up there a little too quickly, it appeared, Whitey.
Yes, he definitely did push the foul line. You could see it. He knew it himself, too, Jack, as soon as he let the ball go.
The 1-2-8 for Dick Hoover. Dick has a 16-pin advantage. He's going to have to be careful with this one. Covers all 3 pins very nicely, and that's 4 straight spares for Dick Hoover. Now Carter is up on 30. Carter trying to get on a strike. And no 10-pin. Down with 36 through the 3rd. And looking for his spare right here. Be a 13-pin difference in the match. Don Carter was named Bowler of the Year 5 different times. There's his 10-pin, and there's his spare. Now we come around to the 5th frame with Dick Hoover leading by 13 pins.
I imagine, Jack, another top honor, which Don is very much elated with the recently formed Missouri Sports Hall of Fame, why he was elected to it.
And the Hall of Famer carries a strike. With that good 6-pin action, you saw that 10 go down. That gives Don 56 through the 4th frame with a strike up. Whenever you're in this company and you're looking at it either from the angle of Dick Hoover or Don Carter and the other fellow strikes, you better start striking right along with it. And a 10-pin for Richard. Speaking of Richard, Carl Richard will be the opponent for the winner in this show next week. It gives Dick Hoover 74 through the 4th, a 12-pin lead. But the big item is that he will not have that strike working as Don Carter will when Don comes up in the 6th frame. Hoover covers that 10-pin nicely. Sixth frame. Dick Hoover working on a spare. And the 7-pin topples for him. Well, he really turned that one over. He looked like he rushed the line again, Whitey, and made up for it by turning that ball over a little bit more than usual.
The movement of his hand, Jack, you could almost see it as he came up with that ball with a wonderful follow-through.
That's what happens from that good control of that ball. Now Carter looking for a double. And a little high, but he carried it. There's his double. So he has cut into that lead, which was 12 pins. Just how much, of course, will depend on what he does with this delivery. Could cut it down to 2 and then be in position to go out in front. We're now in the 7th frame for Don Carter. Looking for 3 in a row. And buried that one. Reburied. That's a 3-bagger for him. And so Don Carter has 85, make it 56 through the 4th frame with the 3-bagger working for him. Dick Hoover has 94 through the 5th with a strike up. Dick Hoover is up. He's looking for a double. Don Carter has a 3-bagger going for him. The match very close to being even right at this point. And Hoover is going to cross over and get a double with a Brooklyn hit. He crossed over, got that double. So, in this particular game, Hoover is ahead by 8 pins. Carter started it with a 6-pin lead, so the difference is only 2 pins. Who's going to continue this string of strikes? Hoover looking for 3. And leaves a 10-pin. His fans moaning and groaning with every pitch, because they know that each and every ball is extremely important. Carter in pretty good shape right here. He has suddenly taken the lead. 1 pin difference, actually, but we'll have to wait and see what he does in the 8th frame. There's the 10-pin for Hoover, who comes back whistling. Came back whistling from that foul line. There's his spare in the 8th frame. 143 through the 7th with a spare up for Dick Hoover. Here's Don Carter, who always uses that glove that he himself endorses. He practices what he preaches, looking for another strike. He started that pretty far outside and didn't get the action. Gets a 7 count. Leaves the 2-5-8. Seems to me he was out there before on that same lane, Whitey. Was back in the first game. That's where he opened in the 9th frame of the first game. It was very costly to him. Cost him 30-some pins as it interrupted a string of strikes. 2-5-8. Covers all 3 of them in very fine fashion. So, Don Carter has 133 through the 7th. That last pitch hurt Carter. So you can look back at the 9th frame in the first game and this delivery here in the 8th. Of course, same thing happened to Hoover. There's another 10-pin. 10-pin for Carter. I started to say the same thing happened to Dick Hoover when he left that 10-pin in the 8th frame when he was looking for a 3-bagger. So Hoover can go further ahead if he can get that strike in the 9th when he comes up. Carter makes it. Second 10-pin he's had to shoot in this particular game. An 11-pin lead now for Dick Hoover in this game. 5 pins overall. And there's Hoover getting that strike in the 9th. An extremely important strike. What's he going to do here? He has a chance for a possible 223 game if he can go all the way. Is Hoover going to double? And an 8-10. That didn't help him any. Dick Hoover comes up with that split here.
Pretty sure, Jack, he'll really go for it because he's got the power to maybe bring that pin back.
Sometimes they can do it. But that ball just pinned the pin And that's it for Dick Hoover in the second game here, 191, following a 213 game and a two-game total of 404. Don Carter with a chance for a 202 and a chance to regain the lead and maintain the lead. Is he there? Beautiful ball, but no 10-pin. That's two 10-pins in a row here and three 10-pins in this particular game for Carter. Chance for a 192 if he can bring this back and get a 10 count. A 191, which would tie Dick Hoover in this game, and we'd still have that 6-pin differential. There's the 10-pin. They make it look easy to get, but you know how darn easy it is to miss that. So a 10 count would give him a 191, and we'd have a tie game here in the second game, and Carter would be leading by 6 pins. He's looking for 10, and he ends with 6, and that hurts him. So there's his final delivery in the second game. Whitey giving Don Carter 187, 406, and a 2-pin difference here at the end of the second game. Right here, a message, and back in a minute to visit with Don Carter. .406 to 404 as we get ready for the third and final game of the match, and Don Carter couldn't be any closer. You fellas go in for excitement, don't you?
It looks that way,
Huh?
Jack. I don't think either one of us like it too well, but we'd rather have about a 50-pin lead, but it doesn't work out that way.
As I look back over the score sheet, it doesn't appear that either one of the two lanes giving you too much trouble.
No, actually, the only bad ones is when I got to the line batter, threw the ball badly. I feel like I know what to do on each one of them.
How about the 10 pins?
Well, that's one of those things. The ninth frame, the ball was pretty weak.
Of course, a 10-pin stopped Dick when he was looking for a 3-bagger there.
Well, yes, the big one, I think, was the 8-10, which was a bad break for him. Could have taken maybe a 30-pin lead.
Well, if it's excitement we want, we've got it, huh?
I hope so, Jack.
Don, the best to you as we
Thank
continue along. And to you too, Dick Hoover. And we're all set for the third and final game here on Top Star Bowling. This first ball in the last game is so extremely important. Dick Hoover leading off in 29, trailing by only a couple of pins. He's on the nose to start, and he gets away from the split as the 10-pin topples, and he leaves the 4-7. You see, these bowlers, they recollect all of these things. That 8-10 had momentarily escaped me, the one that Dick Hoover left in the 10th frame, and by the way, he had been working on a strike when he went in there, but Don Carter remembered it, of course, because that is what allowed him to maintain the lead in this particular match, shooting for $1,000. Dick Hoover spares in the first frame of the last game, and Don Carter, leading by only 2 pins, comes up. Who's going to do what? Boy, this is great excitement, I'm sure you'll agree, and you don't have to be an expert to enjoy this game of bowling, whether you're watching or participating. You see that one walking in there, couldn't you? You'd see that one walking right in. If you were to ask either one of these bowlers or any of the top star bowlers you see on the show how they got to be a star, I know the one word that would come to their mind would be practice. Now, of course, you and I can't practice every day like these fellows do. But if you're in a league and want to boost your score, you're going to benefit by at least 1 day's extra bowling. Try it this bowling season and see how you do. Looking for a double, trying to increase his lead. He's there. Double for Carter to start. You can't start any better than that. That adds to his lead. Dick Hoover working on a spare. He's been here with us 4 weeks. This is his 5th try. He was high, leaves the 4-7 once again, as he did over on 29. He has 18 in the first frame. difficult to ascertain the lead that Carter enjoys at the moment because a good deal of it depends on what he does with this next delivery. Miss Hoover, he shot the eyes out of those spares. And that's the one thing about Dick Hoover, Whitey. When he hasn't been ripping them in that pocket and carrying those strikes, he has been very consistent with those spares.
Yes, well, this is typical of the top star bowlers, Jack. They don't have problems because although it showed us here a couple times when they did have a cluster of pins, they had trouble just like the average bowler. And normally you're just shooting at 1 or 2 pins.
Looking for his first strike of the game. He gets there. Boy, he really swept him off of there that time, so there's a strike for Dick Hoover. 2 spares and a strike, 38 through the second frame with a strike up. Don Carter has started with a double. That unique style, that lift with that glove, getting the ball out there, and I didn't think he was going to carry through there. Whitey, how do you explain a hit like that? I didn't think he'd come anywhere near carrying through and getting that 5-pin.
Well, I would have to say, Jack, that this is the typical Don Carter hit where the ball is definitely light and he gets this mixing action.
So he has 3. And a bigger lead over Dick Hoover. And now on 29, looking for 4. He's hot. He's hot. That's 4 up. Mr. Bowling, they call him, and not without good reason. And I have yet to meet a professional bowler who will argue with that title. His lead is now 22 pins. And he could increase it because he has that string of strikes going for him. Here's Dick Hoover looking for a double. He needs this one, too. And he leaves the 4-pin with a thin hit. He got that good mixing action, too, with the thin hit, but nothing took that 4 for him. So he fails to double. And looking up at those 4 big X's. And Hoover's in the 4th frame of the final game. After having won here 4 times, he's down and has to stage a comeback. There's a strike. But we saw him do that against Glenn Blakesley a few weeks ago. He really got hot, threw 10 strikes in the final game and came away with a 10-pin victory after bowling 663. Now he's 24 pins down to Don Carter. Hoover bowling in the 5th frame, working on a spare. And another 4-pin. Another 4-pin. So he left the 4-7 twice, and then a strike, and then 2 4-pins. So you can see that he has been high with almost all of his deliveries in the 5 frames so far. 32-pin lead for Carter now. Another spare covered by Hoover. It would appear now that all Carter has to do is match Hoover whenever Hoover strikes and avoid those opens. Is that 5? What do you think? The 7-pin looks at him when it's all over. That was comparable to the previous hit that he had that carried for him. This time he leaves the 7, Whitey. Stops that string of strikes at 4. Nonetheless, he's in good shape. He started the game with a 2-pin lead. Total pins count in this match. Carter's now ahead by 34 pins. Shooting the 7. Covering. So we've gone through 5 frames. Hoover 77 with a spare up. Don Carter 109 with a spare up. And a lead for Don Carter in the match of 32 pins. To get back on one right here because he knows Hoover's about due to start popping a couple. And he rocked that 10-pin. He left the 7-pin, he rocked the 10-pin. Carter knows that Hoover is yet to be heard from in this particular game and match. You can expect anything from the Akronite. Intense concentration. That slow approach. Extended delivery. The spare. Well, Hoover knows that he has only 5 frames remaining. He also knows that he's down by 34 pins. He knows it better than you and I know it. He's been high the last few deliveries. There he is again. That's the third 4-pin in a row that he has left. He has left the 4-7 twice and the 4-pin 3 times. He's had but 1 strike in this game, and he's been unable to compensate. The lead remains the same for Carter through yet another frame with only 4 more to go. 34 pins is the difference. There's his spare. And then he should shoot the spares and stay within striking distance. He's far from being out of it. He could go on out to a 236 game here. And Carter has 128 through the 5th. He could go on to a 268. He started with 4 strikes in this game. Now Hoover's shaking his head. Whoop. Leaves the 2-4. He was shaking his head, then he stopped shaking it for a while, thinking he was going to get a break with that 1 pin that was spinning around down there for him. Gives Dick 114 through the 6th, but more important than that, each frame that he allows to get away without throwing that strike to get a string started, the closer Don Carter is to meeting the next opponent here on Top Star Bowling, Carl Richard. 2-4 goes down. No opens in this particular game for Dick Hoover. He had a split in the 10th frame of the 2nd game. That's the one that would be the most significant right now. Carter's lead is 36 pins, working on a spare. 7th frame. Nope. And a 6 count on that spare. 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. He left that previously in the 1st game. So did Dick Hoover. And Carter left the 2, 4, 5, 8 in the 2nd game. 5 count is what I meant to say, of course, before. Thanks for correcting me at home. He covers. He got that action this time from the 4, took that 7. He arches his eyebrows as he comes back, knowing that he almost missed that one. Rolling in the 8th frame. Closer to victory with each frame that goes by. A 31-pin lead as he bowls, and 5-pin. It's one of the few times you'll see Don Carter throw a ball, hit the pocket, and fail to carry that 5. But he did this time. The door is still open for Dick Hoover, if he can take advantage of it. Of course, what he does, Carter could offset. Carter will pay particular attention to the path of that ball, and he'll use that knowledge a bit later on when he rolls on 29 in the 10th frame. 162 through the 7th. Dick Hoover has a spare up. 8th frame. He's going to get on one. He's been high throughout this game. That looks good. There it is. That sets the stage for a little added excitement that might be thrown in here.
Would you like to play if-ins? What would happen?
What would happen?
It's a possible chance here this could end up in a 222 tie game.
So Carter would win by 2 pins?
Carter strikes spares, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or with a good strike for Hoover, Hoover could win with 224.
Hoover trying to go all the ways in the 9th frame. And he comes up with a split. No place for that, he's telling himself. The 5-7. I'm pretty sure, Whitey, that his previous frames dictated the delivery of the last 2 balls. And in the 8th frame, he got the strike. But here in the 9th, he didn't quite come up there. The ball skidded away and didn't carry that 5 for him.
Yes, I think his ball reacted the same way as Carter's, not taking the 5-pin out.
He tried to stay away from those high hits, which have hampered him throughout. And the split results, and he might get it. He does. That's what you call getting it under pressure. And that gives Dick Hoover, who was working on a strike 154, Let's see what Don Carter does here in the ninth frame. A strike would put him in great shape. There's his hit. There's that hit of his. Giving him 182 through the eighth with a strike. He cannot lose in this match. It's all over. Started with a 2-pin lead in this game. He has added to it steadily throughout. Now here he is in the 10th frame. Leaves the 2-4-5. Looking for a mark in the 10th frame. Shooting the 2-4-5. He covers it. Giving Don 202 through the 9th. 222 with a 10 count here. Should give him 628. There it is. 222, 608. 628 for Carter. With a 222 game. The best that Dick Hoover can do is 204 and 608. So Carter has to win by at least 20 pins. The king of the hill has been dethroned here. And Hoover in the 10th frame leaves the 4-7, and let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times he has left that 4-pin with other combinations or by itself in this game. There is Hoover's spare. So after knocking off 4 top star bowlers, Dick Hoover has been dethroned by Don Carter. Looking for 192. Hoover ends with 192. The handshake. 192, 596 for Dick Hoover, 222, 628 for Don Carter. Back in a moment to award the prizes and meet the bowlers. This was the 5th time that we've had the pleasure of visiting with Dick Hoover here on Top Star Bowling. I know you folks enjoyed his work throughout. Dick? It's been wonderful to have been with you, Dick. You're a very congenial gentleman, and your bowling was top flight, top star, to be sure.
Well, it's what, like they say, Jack, every good thing has to come to an end.
And this was a good thing for you, I know, and good for us, too. Here is a LaSalle wristwatch that I know you'll enjoy. And a check, a little different amount this time rather than the 1,000. Here's one for $500, making a grand total of $4,500. Dick, thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. It's been indeed a pleasure being here at the Hoffman Lanes.
Dick Hoover. And now let's meet the winner of today's match. Let's call on Don Carter. And Don, bring your ball up with you, will you, please? Don, congratulations.
Thank you, Jack.
Here's this Sal watch for you. And I'll just keep this in my pocket so we might make use of you and your bowling ball. The check for $1,000, which I'll just hang on to because I see you quite often in St. Louis. And what about your grip, Don? A lot of people are constantly asking about the kind of ball you use, the grip, and what part the glove plays.
Well, Jack, I use what we call the semi-fingertip grip. I insert the thumb in all the way, then the fingers between the 2 joints, and very relaxed. And the glove, the pad here, as you can see, fills up the empty space, keeps the ball firm. But I do have a very relaxed grip.
Mm-hmm. Ordinarily, when you turn it that way, if you didn't have the glove on, you would have that empty space in there.
You would, and therefore you'd have to tighten your grip up to keep the ball firm.
So the glove helps you to relax.
Right.
And a semi-fingertip ball is what you use.
Semi-fingertip, Jack.
You're going to be using it next week against Carl Richard.
That's what I understand.
Should be a lot of fun. Don, I better give you this. People will be talking about me. $1,000 for you, Don.
Thank you, Jack.
And you might as well take the watch now that we're through.
Fine.
Congratulations
thank
once again.
you. Fine. See you next week.
Our winner on Top Star Bowling this week, Don Carter. Please join us next week when Don Carter's opponent will be Carl Richard. You'll enjoy that one, too. Now, Jack Buck from the Hoffman Lanes says thanks for your time this time. Till next time, so long. Top Star Bowling has been presented by LaSalle, the Precision Jeweled Watch. Bowling equipment by Brunswick, the #1 name in bowling. Top Star Bowling is sanctioned by the American Bowling Congress.